In the 7th month of my imprisonment, I drew my final breath. As the poison burned through my veins, only one thought echoed in my mind. Alden. May we never meet again. In this life or the next. When I opened my eyes once more, crimson silk blanketed the earth, and flutes sang through the streets. I had been reborn, returned to the day of my coming-of-age ceremony. The day everything began. He stood beneath the blooming peach tree, dressed in moon-white robes. The gentleness in his eyes, still the same one I once craved. He thought I would rush into his arms as before, blushing and confessing that I wanted to marry him. Instead, I stepped aside, avoiding the jade pendant he offered, and bowed calmly. Thank you for your highness's kindness. But I am already betrothed and dare not overstep. Then I turned, walking toward the carriage waiting beyond the courtyard, leaving him only my unwavering back. This time, I would protect my family and live a peaceful life with the what really meant for me. As for his feigned tenderness and his power that once ruled the court, they would have nothing to do with me anymore. In the 7th month of my confinement, I finally breathed my last. Curled upon the damp straw, I could feel life slowly fading from my body as the poison spread. Moira, do you think death will save you? Alden's icy voice came from beyond the cell door. Your father's and brother's heads still hang upon the city walls. Your sister has been sent to the army camps. This is the price of betraying me. I struggled to lift my head, to look at the man I had loved for 10 years. He was still as handsome as a god, robes of brocade and a jade belt gleaming. So utterly out of place in this filthy dungeon. Alden. Blood bubbled up between my lips. With my final breath, I cursed him. I wish never to see you again. In any lifetime. Before darkness claimed me, I heard him kick open the iron door in fury. Moira? Why are you staring off like that? The familiar voice made me jolt awake. I was standing amid the grand banquet of my coming-of-age ceremony. My mother was looking at me with concern. I glanced down. My wrists were smooth, unscarred, free of the marks left by shackles and lashes. The prince has arrived, whispered my half-sister, Chloe, heading for Velvet obsession, jealousy threading her tone. I raised my head and there he was. Alden, in his moon-white robes, holding a jade pendant, walking toward me beneath a shower of peach blossoms. He looked exactly as he had when I first met him at 15, gentle, radiant, breathtaking. I have been reborn. Returned to the very day when fate first turned against me. Moira, Alden said softly, standing before me. This is a warm jade from Heatyan. I searched all of Gyeonggan to find it. Will you accept it? In my past life, this was the moment I accepted the pendant and began 10 years of blind devotion. It had all ended in the annihilation of my family and my own death in a dungeon. This time, I took a step back and performed a perfect curtsy under countless watching eyes. Thank you for your highness's favor. The murmuring crowd fell silent. Alden's smile froze. However, I continued clearly, I am already engaged and cannot accept. A shadow flickered in his gaze, dark, fleeting, gone in an instant. Oh. His tone was light, but his fingers tight and around the jade. And which fortunate young man holds that honor? My father and Lord Patrick arranged it long ago. I replied smoothly, scanning the crowd. And there, I caught sight of a familiar face, Lancelot, son of the late commander who had once died shielding me from a hail of arrows. Alden's voice turned mocking. The Lancelot family? But wasn't Lord Patrick's son already a branch of the Lancelot line? I interrupted, bowing once more. The auspicious hour has arrived. I shall take my leave. As I turned away, I heard the crisp sound of jade shattering in his palm. I didn't look back. I walked straight to the carriage waiting at the gates. This time, I would rewrite everyone's fate with my own hands. Defiant girl. Do you know what it means to offend Prince Daikon? The moment I returned home, my father hurled his teacup to the floor in fury. I knelt, shards of porcelain cutting into my knees. Father, if I told you that Alden would rebel in 3 years and that the Chloe family would be executed for treason, would you believe me? His hand froze mid-air. Utter nonsense. On the 15th of July, floods will ravage Gyeonggan. Daikon will volunteer to oversee relief efforts, But he'll embezzle all 300 taels and tiles of disaster funds. The starving people will riot. Tens of thousands will die. My father's face paled. In August, he'll send assassins after the crown prince and frame the second prince. In October. Enough. He slammed the door shut, lowering his voice. Where did you hear such treasonous talk? It isn't hearsay, I said bitterly. It's what your daughter lived through. I rolled up my sleeve to reveal where the brand mark should have been unmarred now, but once seared into my flesh in the imperial prison. Alden burned his personal seal into me here. He said it was the price of betrayal. My father's hand trembled. And here. I pointed to my ankle. He chained me for 7 months, demanding I confess to our family's rebellion. Father. I had a long, terrible dream. I wept. In that dream, I accepted his jade pendant and our whole house fell into ruin. He staggered, clutching at the table for support. After a long silence, he asked, That's supposed betrothal with the Lancelot family. It's false, I admitted, wiping my tears. But the Lancelots will become our allies. Why them? Because I saw again the image of Lancelot from my past life bleeding, dying, yet still shielding me. Because he was the only one who never betrayed me. Father let out a long sigh. Then I shall play along with your ruse. I bowed deeply, tears dripping onto the floor. When I rose, the mirror caught my reflection 15 years old again, untouched by the years of torment. Alden. In this life, your blood will pay for every debt. I sent my maid to wait by the back alley of the Patrick estate for 3 days. Miss. Lancelot said to meet at Drunken Immortal Tavern. Room 3. At the hour of the goat. Apricot returned with a note tucked in her sleeve. I burned it immediately, changed into a plain gown, and slipped out through the side gate, veil hiding my face. The Drunken Immortal Tavern was the busiest in the capital, precisely why it was the safest place for a secret meeting. When I opened the door, Lancelot was standing by the window, broad-shouldered in dark battle attire. His back straight as a blade. Lady Chloe rarely requests my company, he said without turning. What is it you wish to discuss? His voice was cool, distant like frost. The last time I had seen him in my previous life, he had been pierced by countless arrows, still trying to shield me. My nose stung. I almost couldn't speak. Lancelot, do you remember saving a little girl from drowning in the Imperial Gardens when you were 7? His body stiffened. You cut your left arm on a rock 3 inches long. She gave you a handkerchief embroidered with hibiscus flowers to stop the bleeding. Lancelot turned sharply, eyes wide with shock. That. No one else could possibly know that. I know. I removed my veil. Because that little girl was me. He studied my face, suspicion and disbelief warring in his gaze. Why tell me this now? Because. I drew a steadying breath. I need your help. I poured him a cup of wine. My fingers trembled. 3 days from now, there will be a fire in the palace. Lancelot frowned. That's not something to say lightly. It's no rumor, I said firmly, locking eyes with him. It will start behind the 6th hall when a maid named Willow knocks over an oil lamp. The fire would have reached the library, but it was promptly noticed by the head eunuch on duty. I continued, saying that the emperor had rewarded him with 50 tiles of silver for his quick action. Lancelot's hand tight and around the hilt of his sword. If that had really happened, then it would prove that I wasn't lying. I stood up. 3 days from now, at the same hour, I will wait for you here. As I left, I could feel his gaze lingering on my back, just like in my previous life. On my way back to the manor, I deliberately took a detour through the Eastern Market and bought several bolts of fine yen brocade. Why did you suddenly buy so much fabric, miss? Apricot asked curiously. To make new clothes for Chloe. I smiled. Hasn't she always admired my pink dress? Apricot hesitated, clearly aware of how my half-sister often secretly sabotaged me. As soon as I entered the courtyard, I saw Chloe sitting on a stone bench, embroidering. You're back, sister. She stood and curtsied, but her eyes kept darting toward the bundle behind me. I brought you some fabric. I smiled and opened the bundle. This pink one suits you the best. Chloe's eyes lit up as she touched the brocade. But a trace of guilt quickly passed through them. It was swiftly replaced by scheming. I knew her too well. In my past life, it was she who had informed Alden of the affair between Lancelot and me. You really treat Chloe well, sister. She spoke in a soft voice. How about tomorrow? Chloe makes you some lotus seed soup? Sounds good. I pretended to be happy. Once she left, I immediately threw the fabric to the bottom of the chest. These fabrics had been scented with a special fragrance to attract snakes and insects. Tomorrow, her bedroom would be very lively. Father was waiting for me in the study. His face grave. Tychon has sent someone to watch the manor. He whispered. The candy vendor at the southeast corner has been keeping watch for 2 days now. I nodded. Just as planned. The next morning, I deliberately went to the garden pavilion to enjoy the cool breeze. Apricot. Go fetch my classic of mountains and seas. I raised my voice deliberately. Lancelot said he liked the Fox of Kinkyu chapter the most, so I need to study it thoroughly. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a yellowish hem darting behind the rockery. Chloe was eavesdropping. Just as I had expected. Miss. Here's the book. Apricot returned. Playing along. I opened the pages of the book and muttered to myself. Lancelot's family controls the northwestern trade routes. If they could collaborate on trading shoe brocade, they would surely make a fortune. I quickly wrote the word fake in the empty space on the page and gave Apricot a subtle glance. She understood at once and nodded. 3 days later, the palace was indeed flooded. The news reached me as I was getting ready. Miss. Apricot rushed in. Panic in her voice. You were right. The West 6th section has flooded. My hand shook, and my eyebrow pencil went astray. Although I had anticipated it, hearing the prophecy come true still sent a chill down my spine. Prepare the sedan. Let's go to Zhuizhanlu. Lancelot had arrived early and was waiting in a private room. When I entered, he immediately stood up. His eyes filled with shock and curiosity. Who are you? Really? Moira. I sat down. It's just, I lived a second life. His brow furrowed deeply. This is absurd. 7 days ago, you were on duty at the Emperor's court. The Emperor praised your swordsmanship. I continued slowly. He rewarded you with a Persian curved sword, with a ruby-encrusted hilt. Lancelot instinctively reached for his waist. You're still hiding that sword in your clothes. Afraid to use it. His pupils contracted sharply. Yesterday, Tychon suggested sending the Assistant Minister of Revenue to the south to investigate all taxes. I went on. In fact, he wanted to distract him so he could place his own men in the position. How do you know all this? His throat bobbed. I know far more than that, I said with a bitter smile. For example, the arrow wound on your right shoulder. Left during the autumn hunt last year when you saved the Crown Prince. Lancelot's face paled completely. If you really lived a second life, what will happen in the future? I looked out at the bright sunlight. Alden will rebel. The teacup slipped from his hand, shattering into pieces. Can you stop it? I can't. I shook my head. At least, not alone. He was silent for a long time. Why come to me? I remembered the image of him lying in a pool of blood in my previous life. Because, in that nightmare, I whispered, you were the only one who never gave up on me. Even until your death. His gaze softened. What do you need me to do? First, help me investigate someone. I dipped my pen in the ink and wrote down a name on the table. The physician at the Imperial Medical Institute. Sage. He has an apprentice named Bamboo. Lancelot nodded. What else? Be wary of your guard, Jax. I said in a low voice. He's Alden's spy. Just then, a commotion broke out downstairs. I looked through the window and felt my blood freeze. Alden, cutting Sofelwayagsi, along with several attendants, was heading towards Zhuizhanlu. Back door. Lancelot grabbed me and pulled me. Hurry. We had just slipped out of the alley when we heard fighting breaking out in the building. Did he find out? My heart raced. Not necessarily. Lancelot frowned. But we have to be more careful when we meet in the future. He handed me a jade whistle. Blow it if you're in danger. I will hear it. I gripped the jade whistle tightly and suddenly remembered something. Don't go to the western outskirts horse track 3 days from now. He looked at me, puzzled. You will fall off your horse and break your left arm, I said softly. You'll miss an important promotion opportunity. Lancelot gave me a deep look before turning and disappearing into the crowd, back at the manor. I was immediately summoned to the study by Father. Tychon criticized Minister Miles in court today. Father whispered. Said he's embezzling grain. I sneered. Miles is the crown prince's man. How do you know? Father asked. Surprised. I took out a notebook and handed it to him. I wrote down the changes in the court over the next 3 years. From memory. Father flipped to the first page. His hands trembling. This. Page 7. I prompted. You'll see how Alden traps Chloe's family. Father turned to that page. His face turning whiter and whiter. Next spring. He will falsely accuse eldest brother of smuggling military weapons at the border. I pointed to one line. Eldest brother will die on the way back to the capital suicide out of guilt. Father slammed the notebook shut. What do you want me to do? Hold your move for now, I said softly. We'll clean house first. That night, a shrill scream pierced the silence from Chloe's room. The servants claimed her bed had been swarmed by centipedes, frightening her into a faint. When I went to check on her, I found a half-hidden letter tucked beneath her pillow. Alden's handwriting. Investigate the connection between the Lancelot and Chloe families. I burned the letter, the flame devouring each stroke of his name. Then looked down at my unconscious half-sister. My fingers brushed her cheek. This is only the beginning. Dear sister. The invitation to the Alistair Estates poet regathering arrived while I was testing a new perfume blend. Miss. Should we decline? Apricot asked, nervously. They say His Highness Tychon will be there. Decline? Why would we? I placed the invitation over the candle flame, Moi says neither. And faint letters emerged from the paper's surface, an invisible ink message. This, I smiled, is an opportunity. The note bore the name Miles, one of Alden's retainers, and the words ode to the immortal river. In my past life, that very poem had made Miles famous. He had recited it at this same gathering, earning thunderous applause and rising to become Alden's most trusted strategist. What no one knew was that the so-called masterpiece had been stolen from a reclusive poet of the former dynasty. Prepare the carriage, I ordered. We're going to the bookhouse. I spent an entire day combing through the dusty shelves of an old shop in the southern quarter. By dusk, I found I'd a tattered copy of miscellaneous notes from the pine window, the original poem intact. On the day of the poet regathering, I dressed in a pale moon-colored gown, my hair pinned with a single wooden hibiscus. Chloe, you're here. Lady Eleanor greeted me warmly. I heard you were unwell recently. Are you better now? Thank you for your concern, madam, I said with a polite bow. It was merely a chill. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Alden sitting in the waterside pavilion, surrounded by his followers. Among them was Miles. The way Alden looked at me like a viper poised to strike, I pretended not to notice and followed my maid to the women's seats. Halfway through the gathering, Miles stood up, cleared his throat, and said with practiced modesty, Recently, I came across a new composition titled Ode to the Immortal River. I beg your esteemed critiques. He paced a few steps, adopting the air of a refined scholar, then began reciting. I lowered my gaze and took a sip of tea to hide the cold smile on my lips. Excellent. Alden was the first to applaud the moment the poem ended. Miles, your talent shines brighter than ever. The crowd followed with flattery and praise. Only Lancelot, sitting quietly in a far corner, seemed lost in thought, his eyes flicking toward me. What does Miss Chloe think? Lord Alistair suddenly called out. I've heard you're quite the poet yourself. Every gaze turned to me. Alden's narrowed eyes betrayed surprise clearly. He hadn't expected me to be singled out. The poem is beautiful, I said softly. Only what? Miles asked, smug and curious. Only that I seem to have read it somewhere before. I tilted my head thoughtfully. Wasn't it a work of the late scholar Felix from the previous dynasty? Miles's face drained of all color. Chloe, cutting fulfilled wide sigh. You must be mistaken. Alden cut in sharply. I don't think so. I reached into my sleeve and drew out the old book, flipping it open to a marked page. Look, every line. Every word. Perfectly identical. Gasps rippled through the hall. Miles stumbled back, knocking over a tea table. This is a setup. Someone's framing me. He stammered, glancing frantically at Alden. But Alden had already turned away, as though he had never known him. Perhaps Miles once read it somewhere and confused it for his own. I offered sweetly. Felix's poetry was never widely circulated. Relief washed over Miles's face. Why, yes. That must be it. Pity, that no sigh. I said, closing the book. Felix wrote this poem for his granddaughter on his deathbed. The final couplet was originally May you forever remain as in your youth, untouched by sorrow or pain. Strange that Miles changed it to May you forever remain as in your youth. My lord. Don't you think? A suffocating silence fell. Even Alden's expression darkened. Miles's knees gave out. He stumbled away, face ashen, and fled the pavilion. By nightfall, word spread that he had hanged himself in shame. You were reckless today. A deep voice murmured behind me. I turned to find Lancelot standing under the parasol tree beyond my courtyard wall. Moonlight tracing his tall silhouette. It was worth it. I handed him a folded paper. Alden has lost one of his most capable pawns. He unfolded it, frowning. An Ordnance Bureau procurement list? The bids open in 3 days. I said quietly. Alden's company, Longchang Trading, will offer to ta-els of silver per blade. His eyes sharpened. How could you possibly know that? In my past life, he made 300 pows and ta-els in profit from that very deal. My lips curved into a cold smile. But not this time. Lancelot was silent for a moment, then said, I can alter the ministry's base price records. I've already contacted Yongsheng Trading. I replied. They'll take the contract for 1 tau and 8 kion per blade better quality. 2. His gaze flicked up. Since when have you? In my last life, Yongsheng was framed by Alden and driven to bankruptcy. The owner died with hatred in his heart. I cut him off. I'm simply giving him a chance to avenge himself early. Lancelot studied me for a long time. You've changed. Anyone who dies once does. No. He shook his head slightly. I mean, Meow. You've become even more. He didn't finish. The sound of the night watchman's gong echoed in the distance. I must go. He vaulted over the wall. We'll see what comes of it in 3 days. 3 days later, the results from the Ordnance Bureau sent shockwaves through the capital. Longchang Trading not only failed to win the bid, but was also denounced by a censor for overpricing. Alden suffered a devastating loss. Miss. Uppercott burst into my room. Breathless. There's a boy outside, says his surname is Bai. An apprentice from the pharmacy. The needlework basket in my lap nearly overturned. Quickly let him in. When Bamboo's small figure appeared in the doorway, my vision blurred with sudden heat. He had been only 12 when Alden's men silenced him in my past life. Miss Chloe? Bamboo bowed timidly. Master sent me to deliver your medicine. He handed me a blue cloth bundle containing several plasters and a bottle of pills. As I accepted it, my fingers brushed a hidden note beneath the wrappings. Midnight. Southern City. Herb Pavilion. I burned it at once. Thank your master for me, I said, slipping him a small pouch of candied fruit. If anyone bullies you again, come to the Chloe residence. I'll protect you. Bamboo blinked in surprise. How did you know someone was bullying me? I only smiled and patted his head. That night, I dressed in men's clothing and slipped out to the back gate. The Southern Herb Pavilion lay deep within a bamboo grove, lit by a single flickering lamp. Well played, Chloe. Sage stepped out from the shadows, his long gray beard swaying in the wind. With Miles gone, Tychon's lost his right hand. I met the gaze of the famed physician, one who, in my last life, had refused to make poison for Alden and been executed for it. Surely you didn't summon me just to flatter me, Sage. He snorted and clapped his hands. Bamboo emerged, pushing a wheelchair. A skeletal man sat upon it, his face ravaged by sores. Do you recognize him? I studied the roux and face and froze. Dealin? Dealin, former Vice Minister of Revenue. In my past life, he had died of a sudden illness after opposing Alden's salt tax. Dealin's alive? Barely, hadden så feld med sorry. Sage grunted. Tycon fed him a slow poison. If Bamboo hadn't stolen the antidote. I spun toward the boy. You stole Tycon's antidote? Bamboo flinched. I only, fool. I grabbed his shoulders. Do you realize this could cost you your life? Sage arched a brow. It seems Chloe knows far too much for her own good. Tycon runs a secret apothecary in the western quarter. I said quickly. Officially, having fulfilled my sigh. They make sedatives. In truth, they're brewing a tox and called Dream Bene Poise, and that drives its victims slowly insane before killing them. Sage and Dylan exchanged stricken looks. How do you know that? Bamboo can't go back anymore. I interrupted him. Once solved and discovers the antidote was stolen. He'll suspect him first. Sage was silent for a long time before he finally nodded. Bamboo. Stay with Chloe. Bamboo. Terrified. Grabbed Sage's sleeve. Master. Be obedient. Sage said. Patting his head. Only the Chloe family can protect you. On the way back to the manor, I tightly held Bamboo's hand. In my past life, he had stolen the antidote for me and was beaten to death by Alden. This time, no matter what, I would protect him. As soon as I entered the courtyard, something felt off. It was too quiet. Miss. Be careful. Apricot suddenly rushed out from the shadows. Someone's breaking in. Her words were cut off as a crossbow bolt pierced her shoulder. Apricot. I quickly pulled Bamboo behind me and rolled toward the rockery. There's no need for Chloe to hide. A cold voice rang out. The prince just wants to invite you to the manor. From a crack in the stone, I saw 3 men in black standing in the courtyard. The one in charge was none other than Alden's personal guard. Jax. The prince certainly makes a grand entrance. I forced myself to remain calm. Breaking into an official residence in the dead of night, aren't you afraid the censor will report you? The prince said. Jax sneered. If we can't get Chloe, we can take the body of that apprentice instead. I gripped Bamboo's trembling hand. All right. I slowly stood. I'll go with you. Jax grinned in satisfaction. Just as he reached out to grab me, a flash of cold light shot through the air. Ah, Jax screamed, clutching his wrist, as a willow leaf dart embedded deeply into his pulse. Lancelot appeared like a divine being, his sword gleaming coldly in the moonlight. Go. He grabbed my hand and Bamboo's, leaping onto the wall. Behind us, the sounds of chasing soldiers filled the air. But Lancelot's speed was astonishing, and we quickly left them behind. How did you? The jade whistle. He answered briefly. I heard you blow it. It was then I realized I had unknowingly blown the whistle. Thank you. My voice trembled. Once again, Lancelot didn't answer but instead tightened his grip on my hand. In Alden's study, a tea set had been smashed to pieces. Investigate. Alden's eyes burned with dangerous fury. Find out what Moira really knows. The day I ran into Alden at Bao Hua Temple, I had deliberately worn a light lotus-colored gauze dress. Chloe also came to offer incense? His voice came from behind me just as the incense in my hand trembled slightly. When I turned, I let a brief flash of surprise flicker in my eyes, only to quickly replace it with pain. Your Highness. I kneeled and curtsied, deliberately softening my voice. What a coincidence. Alden, dressed in a deep indigo brocade robe with a jade crown holding his hair in place, looked as handsome as ever, so handsome it made my heart flutter. In my past life, I had been deceived by this very appearance for 10 years. It's been a long time since we saw each other. After your coming-of-age ceremony. He stepped forward, the scent of deep water incense enveloping him as he drew nearer. How have you been, Moira? I took a step back, maintaining my distance, letting my fingers tremble slightly. Thanks to your Highness. I'm well. Still angry with me? He gave a bitter smile. That day, I was too abrupt. I lowered my head and said nothing, allowing a strand of hair to fall across my forehead, appearing fragile yet stubborn. I heard. His voice softened. I heard that your engagement to the Lancelot family has changed? I sharply raised my head, a hint of panic flashing across my eyes at just the right moment. Who told you that? The capital is so small. He laughed softly. And as for Moira's affairs? Of course. I care. I bit my lower lip, turning to place the incense into the censer, giving him a slightly trembling back. The engagement. I hesitated, my voice catching. It has indeed been broken off. Why? He asked, his voice gentle. The Lancelot family finds me. I choked up. They find that I already have someone in my heart. The half-truth hung in the air like a stone thrown into a still lake. Alden's breath caught in his chest. Moira. No need to say more. Your Highness. I interrupted him, forcing a smile as I blinked back tears. It's all in the past now. I quickly turned and headed for the door, knowing he would follow. As expected, at the release bond, he blocked my path. If you wish, I can go ask the Emperor to arrange a marriage for you. He handed me a handkerchief embroidered with hibiscus flowers. I didn't take it, merely staring at the koi in the pond. Your Highness. Why deceive yourself? I said softly. You know very well that there's too much distance between us. Such as? For example. I said, looking him straight in the eye. You had Jax break into the Chloe family's house last night. You also bribed my half-sister to spy on me. Alden's face turned pale. Who told you that? It doesn't matter. I said, turning to leave. I just hope that your Highness will show mercy and spare the Chloe family. He grabbed my wrist. Moira. You've changed. People change. I pulled my hand free, especially people who died once. His pupils dilated. Without turning back, I walked away, feeling his gaze like a thorn in my back. It wasn't until I turned the corner that I exhaled deeply, wiping the cold sweat from my palm. Well played. A familiar voice came from behind a tree. Lancelot, holding his sword, leaned against a ginkgo tree, his expression dark enough to drip water. You were following me? I frowned. Protecting you. He corrected me. Jax had 5 men lying in wait outside the temple. I felt a warmth in my chest, followed by a wave of guilt. About earlier. I heard everything. He said stiffly. Lancelot's family finds me someone else? Is that what you said? He trushed to my face. It was just a temporary measure. Lancelot snorted and turned away. I chased after him. Are you angry? I wouldn't dare. You're definitely angry. I tugged at his sleeve. If I hadn't said that, how would you have believed the engagement was broken off? Lancelot stopped, suddenly turning to confront me. Do you know what Alden thinks now? His voice was low. He thinks you haven't let go of your feelings for him. And he'll only pursue you more aggressively. His sudden proximity quickened my heartbeat. And I could smell the mixed scent of pinwood and iron rust from his clothes. I want him to think that. I struggled to remain calm, making him believe there was an opening, that he could expose a weakness. Lancelot narrowed his eyes. You plan to play with fire? No. I shook my head. I planned to make him burn himself. We stared at each other for a long while. Then he stepped back. Next time. Tell me in advance. He muttered. So I can arrange the men. I nodded, suddenly noticing the faint redness in his ears. On the way back to the manor, we walked ahead of each other, neither speaking. But my heart hadn't calmed down. As soon as I entered the courtyard, Apricot rushed toward me in a panic. Miss Chloe has been and to the study by father. My heart skipped a beat. What happened? Master found this. Apricot handed me a note. Chloe's handwriting clearly visible. The medicine is ready. I'll make my move in 3 days. I clenched the note and quickly headed toward the study. Just as I reached the door, I heard Chloe's heart-rending cries. Father, please spare me. I was confused, just for a moment. I pushed the door open to find Chloe kneeling on the ground, half of her face swollen from a slap. Father's face was ashen, and a packet of powdered medicine lay on the table. Moira. Father looked up. Come see this. I stepped forward to inspect the powder. A chill running through my spine. Duancheng powder. I muttered softly. It takes 3 hours to take effect, resembling a sudden illness that causes death. In my past life, it was this very poison that Alden had used to kill the crown prince. That vile woman and heir to poison you. My father roared, seething with fury. Get the servants, let's discipline her. Father. Wait. I stopped him. Chloe is just a pawn. The real enemy who wants me gone, you know who that is. Chloe lifted her terrified eyes. Sister. What did Alden promise you? I crouched down to her level. The title of consort? Or golden jewels? She trembled like a leaf in the wind. I don't know. Don't know? I sneered. Do you know how many people he's killed with this poison? Chloe's face turned ashen. Moira. My father spoke gravely. What do you suggest we do? I thought for a moment. Lock her up for now. We don't want the news leaking. That night, I personally visited the woodshed to meet Chloe. Please spare me. Sister. Chloe threw herself on the ground, desperately cowering. Tychon forced me. He said if I didn't comply, he would marry you off to his cousin, the one who killed 3 wives. I finished her sentence for her. Chloe's eyes widened. You? How do you know? I didn't answer. Just handed her a cup of tea. Drink this. She recoiled in fear. No, I don't want to. It's not poison. I sighed. It's forget-me-not powder. It'll help you sleep soundly. Chloe hesitated but eventually took the tea, drinking it in one gulp. Moments later, she fell into a deep slumber. Take her to the family temple, I instructed Lancelot, who had been watching from the shadows. Keep her under strict guard. Lancelot nodded and signaled 2 of his trusted men to carry Chloe to the carriage. You've softened, he whispered. It's not softness. I shook my head. She still has her use. 3 days later, as expected, Alden sent someone to inquire about Chloe's whereabouts. Chloe has gone to stay with her maternal relatives. I told the maid delivering the message. Smiling. If the prince has matters to discuss, he can speak directly to me. The maid nodded awkwardly and left. That night, Lancelot brought unexpected news. The crown princess wants to see you. My teacup almost slipped from my hand. Seraphina? She's my cousin. Lancelot explained. She heard you've been in touch with me and wants to invite you to the palace. My heart raced. Seraphina, in my past life, had been manipulated by Alden, ultimately throwing herself into a well in despair. When is it? Tomorrow. Just before noon. I immediately began preparing a special gift box of calming incense. What's special about this incense? Lancelot asked curiously. It neutralizes the dream bane poison. I replied softly. Has the crown princess been having trouble sleeping lately? With palpitations and vivid dreams? Lancelot's expression shifted. How do you know that? Because, in my past life, she had already been poised and for 3 months by this time. The next day, I entered the palace, wearing a simple lake blue gown. No makeup, my face bare. I greet the crown princess, I said respectfully. Seraphina looked even more haggard than I expected, though she tried to cover it with makeup. The dark circles under her eyes were still glaringly obvious. Please, rise, she said gently. Lancelot often speaks of you. I bowed again and presented her with the box of incense. This is a calming incense I specially made. Please accept it, Your Highness. Seraphina handed it to a servant without much interest. Lancelot told me that Chloe is skilled in pharmacology? Only a little, I replied humbly. For instance, Your Highness might be suffering from poor sleep lately, possibly due to the night-blooming jasmine near your bedroom. Seraphina froze. Is the night-blooming jasmine harmful? Smelling it alone is harmless, I explained. But it clashes with the rose water you commonly use, causing dizziness and vivid dreams. This was the truth. Though in my past life, the person who poisoned her had used this to mask the symptoms of dream bane. That explains a lot, Seraphina said, realization dawning on her. No wonder the imperial physician couldn't find the cause. If I may be so bold, I said softly, might I see the incense you've been using regularly? Seraphina nodded, and a servant quickly brought forward an intricately crafted incense box. I pretended to examine it carefully. But my true goal was simply to confirm my suspicion. The incense had a small amount of mandrake mixed in. I pointed to a few small black grains, explaining that long-term use could harm the heart. Serafina's face drained of color. This incense is... She didn't finish. But I knew this incense had been sent to her by Alden to the Empress. If your highness trusts me, I said. I have brought my own incense. Perhaps you could consider switching to this one. Serafina looked at me for a long time before suddenly waving her hand, signaling her servants to leave. Chloe, she whispered, lowering her voice. Do you know who is trying to harm me? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I dipped my finger in the tea and wrote a character on the table IUI. Serafina gasped. Why tell me this? Because. I met her gaze. I have a common enemy with you. When we left the palace, Lancelot was waiting for me outside the SHNWU gate. How did it go? Smoothly, I said quietly. The crown princess has agreed to cooperate. Lancelot let out a sigh of relief. I was worried. You know, she's always been stubborn. And I feared she might throw herself into a well. I finished his sentence. He suddenly grabbed my shoulder, his eyes wide with alarm. What did you say? In my past life. I smiled bitterly. Alden orchestrated an affair between her and the imperial physician. And when the crown prince found out, he... Lancelot tightened his grip, a flash of murderous intent in his eyes. It won't happen this time. He growled. I won't let anyone hurt you. We locked eyes, neither of us looking away. Only when footsteps echoed from inside the palace gates did Lancelot loosen his grip and step back. Let's go, he murmured. Alden's people are watching. It was then that I noticed a candy vendor in the distance, who seemed to be watching us suspiciously. Let him look, I said suddenly, slipping my arm through Lancelot's, using it as a shield for the crown princess. Lancelot stepped but didn't pull away. The sunset stretched our shadows long, intertwining, like a pair of lovers. At Eleanor's flower viewing party, I was quietly sipping my tea when a scream pierced the air. Lady Eleanor has fainted. The crowd erupted into chaos. And I immediately set down my cup and rushed over. Eleanor lay on the ground, her face pale and tinged with purple, her breath shallow. Clear the way. I knelt beside her, placing 2 fingers on her pulse. Can you treat her? Alistair, the young master, asked anxiously. Only a little, I replied quickly, unfastening Eleanor's collar. Get me a needle. In my past life, while imprisoned in the cold palace, I had learned acupuncture from an elderly maid. A maid hurriedly brought a needle, and I quickly sterilized it over the candle flame, then inserted it into her occupants. Get me some Chuanjian and Dan Shenhen. After a moment, Eleanor's breathing began to stabilize, but her complexion remained poor. Does Lady Eleanor often feel tightness in her chest? I asked while continuing the treatment. Alistair nodded quickly. The imperial physician said she suffers from insufficient blood flow. Misdiagnosis, I said firmly. Lady Eleanor has a blocked heart meridian. She needs treatment to invigorate blood and break up the stagnation. When Sage arrived in a hurry, Eleanor had already opened her eyes. Who is this? She weakly looked at me. Winston's daughter, Moira. I put away the silver needles. The lady is fine for now, but she needs proper care. Sage examined her and then looked at me, surprised. Your needlework is very professional. My late mother had heart disease, I explained. I learned a little from her. Of course, this was a lie, but no one would bother verifying it. When we left the manor, Alistair personally saw us off and handed me a jade pendant. Should Chloe ever need anything in the future, the Alistair family will be sure to help. I accepted it solemnly, understanding the weight of the token. 3 days later, rumors of my miraculous skills in healing spread throughout the circle of noble women in the capital. Miss Bepricott excitedly ran in. Someone's brought more invitations. I took the thick stack of invitations with a slight smile. In my previous life, around this time, I had been the laughingstock of the entire city. obsessed with Alden. Now, I was the sought-after guest. Invited to every gathering. Keep this one. I pulled out Margaret's invitation. Her family has close ties to the Ministry of War. As Apricot left, Bamboo rushed in. Panicked. Miss. There are people badmouthing you outside. What are they saying? She said. Bamboo's face turned red. She said Mrs. fated to harm her husband's. That your husband died young because of it. And now you're using witchcraft to heal people. I froze. The teacup trembling in my hand. This method was all too familiar last life. Alden had spread rumors about my unlucky fate and my cursed husbands to ruin my reputation. Go fetch Lancelot. Lancelot scaled the wall into the manor by evening. His face dark with anger. I found out. He handed me a note. The rumor came from a wet nurse at the Tycon estate. I sneered. As expected. It's him. It's worse than just that. Lancelot frowned deeply. He's been trying to recruit border generals. He secretly met with Brian 3 days ago. My heart skipped a beat. Alden had used the station troops to stage a coup in my past life. We need to delay him. What do you suggest? I thought for a moment. Suddenly recalling something. Alden's retainer Vern and doesn't he oversee his salt business in Geonden? Lancelot nodded. Yes. What about him? He's insatiably greedy. I said softly. In my past life, Alden had Vernon executed for embezzling salt taxes. But that was 2 years later. Lancelot's eyes lit up. You mean, expose him early? I dipped my tea in and started drawing a route on the table. Every 15th of the month, he secretly smuggles salt into the city through the west gate. Lancelot immediately understood. I'll have the patrol division accidentally discover it. Make it big. I added. It's best if the censors see it firsthand. The plan proceeded smoothly. 5 days later, during the morning court, the censors impeached Vernon for smuggling salt, with irrefutable evidence. The emperor was enraged and ordered a thorough investigation. Alden had to make a public statement, vowing to never tolerate such actions. I heard Vernon is crying injustice in prison. Lancelot said. Smug. He says he was just following Tycon's orders. Alden must have been furious. I sewed a sachet. My stitches precise. Vernon knew too many of Alden's secrets. Suddenly, petting Fauchelme, Lancelot's hand pressed down on mine, stopping me. Teach me. Teach me your needlework, the way you saved Eleanor. He said seriously. Just in case one day. My heart warmed, and I nodded, as I taught him the pressure points. Our fingers brushed occasionally. His fingertips were rough from years of holding a sword, yet they were warm. Here. I guided his fingers onto the iguan point on my wrist, applying gentle pressure. He suddenly looked up, our gazes locking, so close I could count each other's lashes. Flustered, I stepped back but accidentally knocked over the needle basket. I'll go make tea. I hurried to stand, almost tripping over my skirt. Lancelot's ears turned crimson as he bent down to pick up the needles. As the fragrance of the tea swirled around us, he suddenly said, You need to learn self-defense. What? Alden won't stay still forever. He spoke seriously. Next time I'm not around. I understood his concern. All right. So every morning, Lancelot came to the backyard to teach me swordsmanship. Keep your wrist steady. He held my wrist from behind, adjusting my posture, his breath warm against my ear. My heart raced, nearly dropping the wooden sword. Focus, he whispered, his ears turning red as well. A month later, I could barely manage to block 3 or 5 of his strikes. You're improving fast, he remarked. After 6 more months, no ordinary guard will be able to get close to you. Wiping the sweat from my forehead, I suddenly remembered something. How is the crown princess these days? Much better. Lancelot sheathed his sword. My cousin wants to invite you to the palace for a flower viewing. My hand trembled, spilling half the water. In my past life, it was at the crown princess's flower viewing banquet that the empress publicly humiliated me. And I was never able to set foot in the palace again. When? 3 days from now. I took a deep breath. All right. The day I entered the palace, I deliberately wore a low-key lotus-colored dress. The crown princess was hosting the ladies in the pavilion of the imperial garden. And the empress was indeed present. This must be Winston's daughter? The empress smiled warmly. Her eyes cold beneath. I hear you're skilled in medicine? I respectfully curtsy. I know a little. But not to the point of being a master. Perfect. The empress gestured. I've had a headache lately. Chloe, headings or phobe my exertion. Could you take a look? I knew she was testing me. So I cautiously stepped forward. After taking her pulse, having profiled my sigh, I respectfully said, Your Majesty has a strong liver fire, which can be treated with chrysanthemum and cassia seeds and tea. The empress raised an eyebrow. The imperial doctor's prescription is far more complicated. Effective medicine and doesn't have to be complicated. I replied calmly. Neither obsequious nor arrogant. Sharp-tongued indeed. The empress sneered. No wonder Tychon can't forget you. The pavilion fell silent. The crown princess quickly diffused the tension. Mother. You're joking. Moira is already betrothed to a young master from the Lancelot family. Is that so? The empress gave me a meaningful look. Then why have I heard that the Lancelot family is also discussing a marriage with Herbert? My heart skipped a beat. How did the empress know about this? I hadn't even heard the news. Your Majesty. Please see reason. I steadied myself. Marriage is a matter for parents to decide. I am not in a position to speak of it. Before the empress could respond, a palace maid hurried in. Your Majesty. The emperor is approaching. The empress's face immediately changed, and she hurriedly rose to leave. The crown princess breathed a sigh of relief and quietly held my hand. Don't be afraid, she whispered. Once father arrives, she won't dare to act recklessly. Sure enough. Not long after, the emperor appeared, surrounded by eunuchs. I kneeled with the others, my heart pounding in my chest. Rise. The emperor's voice was warm but authoritative. This is Winston's daughter. The crown princess introduced. The one who saved Eleanor last time. The emperor looked at me again. Young and already skilled in medicine. I'm unworthy of such praise. I lowered my head. I merely learned a few emergency remedies by chance. The emperor nodded and said a few more words before leaving. As we were leaving the palace, the crown princess handed me a brocade box. For you, patting fulfilled my obsession. She said softly. Thank you for enduring today. When I opened it back at the manor, it contained a pair of exquisite jade bangles with exceptional luster. This is the crown princess's dowry. Lancelot was standing outside the window, and I hadn't noticed when he arrived. She likes you. I carefully placed the bracelet away. The empress seems to know a lot. She's investigating you, Lancelot said in a low voice. Alden is, too. I walked to the bronze mirror and gazed at my youthful reflection. Let them investigate, I sneered. Let's see who can uncover the truth about my past life. That evening, Lancelot brought unexpected news. Alden has requested leave for the frontier. What? I jumped to my feet. When did this happen? This morning, Lancelot said, his brow furrowing. The emperor granted it, saying Alden is going to inspect the border defenses. I clenched my sleeve. In my past life, Alden had used the excuse of inspecting the border to conspire with the generals to rebel. He can't go. The imperial decree has already been issued. I paced the room, anxiety surging, when a sudden idea struck me. I have a plan. Lancelot raised an eyebrow. What plan? Your cousin, I said quickly. Hasn't the crown princess been showing signs of pregnancy recently? Lancelot's eyes widened. How do you know that? Because in my past life, she was already a month pregnant at this time. I whispered. It's just that it hasn't been discovered yet. You mean, we'll make the crown princess fall ill? I murmured. The crown prince will have to summon Sage, the best doctor in the Imperial Medical Bureau. Lancelot's face lit up with understanding. And Sage listens only to you. Not only that, I added. The emperor values his legitimate grandson above all. And if the crown princess falls ill, Alden's plans could be delayed. The plan proceeded smoothly. 3 days later, the crown princess suddenly fell ill. And the crown prince personally went to summon sage. Sure enough, the emperor issued a decree to postpone Alden's trip. Success. Lancelot slipped through the window, admiration in his eyes. Alden is throwing things in his manner out of anger. I exhaled in relief but remained cautious. This is just a delay, I said softly. He will go to the frontier eventually. Lancelot suddenly took my hand. We will stop him. His hand was warm and strong. And for some reason, it gave me an unexpected sense of security. Outside the window, the moon hung high in the sky. There were still 10 months until the day Alden would attempt his rebellion. On the morning of my coming-of-age ceremony, I was startled awake by urgent knocking. Miss. Wake up. The imperial decree has arrived. Uppercot's voice trembled, laced with tears. I hastily threw on my clothes, a sinking feeling rising in my chest. In the front hall, my father was already kneeling, accepting the decree, his face ashen. The eunuch's sharp voice pierced the air. We grant marriage to Tychon Alden for the princess. Choose an auspicious date for the wedding. So ordered. I sank to my knees, my nails digging into my palms. This imperial decree hadn't existed in my past life. Alden had proposed 6 months later. Chloe. Accept the decree. The eunuch smiled as he handed it to me. I mechanically extended my hand to take it, my mind racing for a countermeasure. After the eunuch left, my father slumped into a chair. How could this happen? He muttered. The emperor never grants marriages easily. Alden requested it. My voice was hoarse. He can't wait any longer. My father suddenly looked up. What do you mean? In my past life, he needed the military connections of Chloe's family to conspire. I never expected him to move so quickly this time, I said bitterly. Just then, the butler rushed in. Master, the Tychon family has sent the betrothal gifts. A full 128 sets of betrayal gifts filled the front courtyard. Alden led the procession, dressed in a deep purple brocade robe, as handsome as a deity. Father-in-law. He bowed respectfully, but his gaze was fixed on me. Moira. I forced down the disgust rising in me and curtsied. Your Highness. Why the long face? He leaned in close, his voice low. Didn't you always want to marry me? In my past life. My blood ran cold. How did he know? Alden reveled in my shock, laughing softly as he withdrew. The wedding is set for the 8th of next month, he declared, his voice ringing out. Moira. Make sure you prepare well. Once this plague of a man was gone, I immediately instructed Apricot to find Lancelot. Miss. Lancelot is not in the manor. Apricot returned with a strange expression. He went to the West Mountain to practice military drills this morning. My heart sank. This was a classic case of drawing the tiger out of the mountain. Alden had planned this from the start. I locked myself in my room the entire day, waiting until the moon rose. The window creaked, and I looked up, startled, seeing Lancelot entering to the window in a night outfit. Weren't you at the West Mountain? I gasped. I turned back halfway. His face was grim. I heard about the marriage decree. My throat tightened, and I couldn't speak. Lancelot suddenly dropped to one knee, taking my hand. Come with me. What? Now? His voice was rough. We'll go to Gyeonggan. Or to Lingnan. Anywhere you want. I looked into his earnest eyes, and my heart twisted in pain. In my past life, he had knelt before me just like this, asking me to leave with him. But I had refused, foolishly believing that Alden would change his mind. Lancelot. I gently stroked his face. I can't go. Why? He tightened his grip. You know marrying him will. Exactly because of that. I interrupted. I can't leave. Alden is already preparing for rebellion. Lancelot's eyes shot up. Are you sure? He requested leave early. And now he's moving you out of the capital. I whispered. He's speeding up his plan. I walked over to my desk and pulled out a stack of secret letters. These are from the spy I planted in Tychon's household. Alden has been meeting with the northern envoys frequently. Lancelot quickly scanned the letters, his face growing darker with each passing second. This isn't enough. He shook his head. Without solid proof, The emperor won't believe that Tychon is plotting rebellion. That's why I have to marry him, I said bitterly. Only by entering the palace can I find the evidence. Lancelot slammed his fist on the desk. It's too dangerous. Have you forgotten? I've already died once. I tried to lighten the mood with a smile. What's the worst that could happen? I'll die again. He suddenly pulled me into his arms. I won't let you die, he whispered in my ear, his voice trembling. I swear. I won't let anyone hurt you. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat. And for a moment, everything didn't seem so terrifying. The wedding day arrived swiftly. On the day of the wedding, I put on the heavy bridal gown and crown, like a warrior preparing for battle. You're so beautiful, miss, Apricot said, her eyes red as she adjusted my gown. The bride in the mirror was meticulously adorned, but her eyes were cold. Is everything ready? Apricot nodded and handed me a jade hairpin. There's an antidote for dream bane hidden in the hollow. I inserted the hairpin and checked the silver needles in my sleeve and the powdered medicine hidden in the belt compartment. Remember, I whispered, on the first day of each month, have bamboo wait by the back gate of the palace. Apricot nodded, tears in her eyes. At the wedding ceremony, Alden's hand tight and slightly as he held mine, as if claiming ownership. I lowered my eyes, playing the part of the shy bride. The crown princess's dowry. Lancelot was standing outside the window, and I hadn't noticed when he arrived. She likes you. I carefully placed the bracelet away. The Empress seems to know a lot. She's investigating you, Lancelot said in a low voice. Alden is, too. I walked to the bronze mirror and gazed at my youthful reflection. Let them investigate, I sneered. Let's see who can uncover the truth about my past life. That evening, Lancelot brought unexpected news. Alden has requested leave for the frontier. What? I jumped to my feet. When did this happen? This morning, Lancelot said, his brow furrowing. The Emperor granted it, saying Alden is going to inspect the border defenses. I clenched my sleeve. In my past life, Alden had used the excuse of inspecting the border to conspire with the generals to rebel. He can't go. The imperial decree has already been issued. I paced the room, anxiety surging, when a sudden idea struck me. I have a plan. Lancelot raised an eyebrow. What plan? Your cousin, I said quickly. Hasn't the crown princess been showing signs of pregnancy recently? Lancelot's eyes widened. How do you know that? Because in my past life, she was already a month pregnant at this time. I whispered. It's just that it hasn't been discovered yet. You mean, we'll make the crown princess fall ill? I murmured. The crown prince will have to summon Sage, the best doctor in the Imperial Medical Bureau. Lancelot's face lit up with understanding. And Sage listens only to you. Not only that, I added, the Emperor values his legitimate grandson above all. And if the crown princess falls ill, Alden's plans could be delayed. The plan proceeded smoothly. 3 days later, the crown princess suddenly fell ill, and the crown prince personally went to summon Sage. Sure enough, the emperor issued a decree to postpone Alden's trip. Success, SS. Lancelot slipped through the window, admiration in his eyes. Alden is throwing things in his manner out of anger. I exhaled in relief but remained cautious. This is just a delay, I said softly. He will go to the frontier eventually. Lancelot suddenly took my hand. We will stop him. His hand was warm and strong. And for some reason, it gave me an unexpected sense of security. Outside the window, the moon hung high in the sky. There were still 10 months until the day Alden would attempt his rebellion. On the morning of my coming-of-age ceremony, I was startled awake by urgent knocking. Miss, wake up. The imperial decree has arrived. Apricot's voice trembled, laced with tears. I hastily threw on my clothes, a sinking feeling rising in my chest. In the front hall, my father was already kneeling, accepting the decree, his face ashen. The eunuch's sharp voice pierced the air. We grant marriage to Tychon Alden for the princess. Choose an auspicious date for the wedding. So ordered. I sank to my knees, my nails digging into my palms. This imperial decree hadn't existed in my past life. Alden had proposed 6 months later. Chloe. Accept the decree. The eunuch smiled as he handed it to me. I mechanically extended my hand to take it, my mind racing for a countermeasure. After the eunuch left, my father slumped into a chair. How could this happen? He muttered. The emperor never grants marriages easily. Alden requested it. My voice was hoarse. He can't wait any longer. My father suddenly looked up. What do you mean? In my past life. He needed the military connections of Chloe's family to conspire. I never expected him to move so quickly this time, I said bitterly. Just then, la sigh. The butler rushed in. Master. The Tychon family has sent the betrothal gifts. A full 128 sets of betrothals filled the front courtyard. Alden led the procession, dressed in a deep purple brocade robe, as handsome as a deity. Father-in-law. He bowed respectfully, but his gaze was fixed on me. Moira. I forced down the disgust rising in me and curtsied. Your Highness. Why the long face? He leaned in close, his voice low. Didn't you always want to marry me? In my past life. My blood ran cold. How did he know? Alden reveled in my shock, laughing softly as he withdrew. The wedding is set for the 8th of next month, he declared, his voice ringing out. Moira. Make sure you prepare well. Once this plague of a man was gone, I immediately instructed Apricot to find Lancelot. Miss. Lancelot is not in the manor. Apricot returned with a strange expression. He went to the West Mountain to practice military drills this morning. My heart sank. This was a classic case of drawing the tiger out of the mountain. Alden had planned this from the start. I locked myself in my room the entire day, waiting until the moon rose. The window creaked, and I looked up, startled, seeing Lancelot entering to the window in a night outfit. Weren't you at the West Mountain? I gasped. I turned back halfway. His face was grim. I heard about the marriage decree. My throat tightened, and I couldn't speak. Lancelot suddenly dropped to one knee, taking my hand. Come with me. What? Now. His voice was rough. We'll go to Gyeonggan. Or to Lingnan. Anywhere you want. I looked into his earnest eyes, and my heart twisted in pain. In my past life, he had knelt before me just like this, asking me to leave with him. But I had refused, foolishly believing that Alden would change his mind. Lancelot. I gently stroked his face. I can't go. Why? He tightened his grip. You know marrying him will. Exactly because of that, I interrupted. I can't leave. Alden is already preparing for rebellion. Lancelot's eyes shot up. Are you sure? He requested leave early. And now he's moving you out of the capital. I whispered. He's speeding up his plan. I walked over to my desk and pulled out a stack of secret letters. These are from the spy I planted in Tychon's household. Alden has been meeting with the Northern d'Embrace frequently. Lancelot quickly scanned the letters, his face growing darker with each passing second. This isn't enough. He shook his head. Without solid proof, the Emperor won't believe that Tychon is plotting rebellion. That's why I have to marry him, I said bitterly. Only by entering the palace can I find the evidence. Lancelot slammed his fist on the desk. It's too dangerous. Have you forgotten? I've already died once. I tried to lighten the mood with a smile. What's the worst that could happen? I'll die again. He suddenly pulled me into his arms. I won't let you die, he whispered in my ear, his voice trembling. I swear. I won't let anyone hurt you. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat, and for a moment, everything didn't seem so terrifying. The wedding day arrived swiftly. On the day of the wedding, I put on the heavy bridal gown and crown, like a warrior preparing for battle. You're so beautiful, miss, Apricot said, her eyes red as she adjusted my gown. The bride in the mirror was meticulously adorned, but her eyes were cold. Is everything ready? Apricot nodded and handed me a jade hairpin. There's an antidote for dream bane hidden in the hollow. I inserted the hairpin and checked the silver needles in my sleeve, and the powdered medicine hidden in the belt compartment. Remember, I whispered, On the first day of each month, have bamboo wait by the back gate of the palace. Apricot nodded, tears in her eyes. At the wedding ceremony, having fulfilled my accession, Alden's hand tight and slightly as he held mine. As if claiming ownership, I lowered my eyes, playing the part of the shy bride. At the banquet, guests were praising the match of talent and beauty, unaware that this was a deadly game of life and death. Your Highness, I said softly, I can't handle much alcohol. May I take my leave? Alden smiled gently. Of course. My dear. Back in the bridal chamber, I immediately ordered my maids to leave. Won't you wait for His Highness? The old maid asked in surprise. He must enjoy himself with the guests. I replied sweetly. I'll rest for a while. Once they were all gone, I quickly pulled a dagger from under my pillow and hid it in my sleeve. Then, let out a low sigh. I began to inspect the room. Sure enough, I found a hidden compartment above the bed canopy. It was empty, but it was the perfect size to conceal something. I quickly noted the location and continued checking the other corners. Just as I heard footsteps, I hurriedly lay back on the bed and pretended to sleep. Alden entered, reeking of alcohol, but did not approach the bed. Don't pretend, he sneered. I know you're awake. I opened my eyes to see him sitting at the table, pouring more wine for himself. Your Highness isn't going to join the guests? I asked softly. Who would spend their wedding night with guests? He replied, watching me with a playful smile. I clenched the edge of the blanket, fighting to control my fear. Alden suddenly stood and walked toward me. Instinctively, I shrank back. Afraid of me? He leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. You've known exactly how I would treat you, haven't you? In your past life. My heart pounded. I had been right. He knew I was reborn. I don't understand what Your Highness is saying, I stammered. Alden released me, having fulfilled my obsession. Laughing. It doesn't matter. We have plenty of time. He turned to leave, then added, tonight, I'll sleep in the study. When the door closed, I collapsed onto the bed, drenched in cold sweat. How much did he know? The next morning, by tradition, I was to serve tea to my parents-in-law. But since Alden's mother had passed away young, we only needed to visit the Emperor and Empress in the palace. The Emperor looked ill, his complexion dark, his voice weak. Live a good life, he said, presenting me with a pair of jade ruyi. May you soon bear heirs to the royal family. I accepted with respect. But inwardly I scoffed. In my past life, I remained untouched, and Alden never even considered me worthy of his touch. The Empress, however, was kind, holding my hand and speaking to me with a personal tone. Tychon's temperament is cold. Please be more understanding. On our way back to the manor, Alden kept his eyes closed, resting, until the carriage turned a corner. And he suddenly spoke. Lancelot has returned to the capital. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face neutral. What do you mean, Your Highness? Don't pretend, he sneered. I know all about your little affair. I gripped my handkerchief tightly. There's nothing between Lancelot and me. It's completely innocent. Is that so? He suddenly grabbed my neck, his fingers tightening. Then why did he break into the manor last night? I struggled to breathe but didn't beg for mercy. Just as my vision darkened, he released me. Don't worry. I didn't kill him, Alden said softly, brushing his fingers over my flushed face. He's still useful. I coughed violently, but inside I breathed a sigh of relief. Lancelot was still alive. Back at the manor, I made an excuse to organize my dowry and locked myself in the storage room. Once I confirmed no one was around, I quickly checked through the items from my dowry. Sure enough, Lancelot had hidden a note inside. I've contacted the Crown Prince, waiting for the right moment. Meet on the first day of the next month. I burned the note and began to plan my next move. According to my memories of the past life, there was a secret room in Alden's study, containing confidential letters from the northern tribes. But how to access it was the problem. The opportunity came sooner than I had expected. 3 days later, Alden was summoned to the palace for a meeting, and I immediately took action. The prince asked me to fetch a memorial from his study. I told the guard at the door. After a brief hesitation, the guard let me in. The study was simply furnished. I quickly checked the bookshelf, the vases, and behind the paintings. Finally, under the bookbox containing The Art of War, I found a hidden button. I pressed it lightly, and the bookshelf silently moved aside, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, there was a stack of letters and an account book. I flipped through them quickly, my heart racing just as I had hoped. There were letters from the northern tribes. One letter clearly stated, "Prepare to move in autumn during the hunting trip. Our army will be stationed outside Yanmen Pass." I was about to examine it further when I suddenly heard footsteps outside. In a panic, I quickly returned everything to its place. Just as I closed the secret compartment, the door to the study opened. "What is the princess doing here?" Alden stood in the doorway with a half-smile. "I came to fetch the memorial your highness mentioned." I forced myself to stay calm but couldn't remember where it was placed. He walked slowly toward me, the scent of dragon's blood incense lingering on him. "When did I ask you to fetch the memorial?" he asked with an amused tone. "This morning. Before you left for the palace." I feigned innocence. Could it be that I misunderstood? Alden studied me for a long time, then suddenly smiled. "I forgot." He picked up a memorial from the table and handed it to me. "Here. Take it." I sighed in relief and was about to leave when he called me back. "By the way," he said casually, "I'm hosting several border generals tonight. You should attend as well." My heart skipped a beat. This was a test. "Of course, Your Highness." At the banquet, Alden acted unusually affectionate, constantly filling my plate and pouring my wine. "The prince and princess are truly a perfect match," one of the generals complimented. I lowered my head shyly, but beneath the table, I gripped my thigh to stay alert. After a few rounds of wine, the conversation shifted to the situation at the border. "I hear the northern tribes have been moving troops lately?" I asked, feigning innocence. The table fell silent. Alden narrowed his eyes. "The princess is interested in border affairs?" "I'm just concerned about my father," I said softly. "He's getting old. And if there's war at the border, Winston is still strong for his age." One of the generals laughed. "The princess need not worry." Alden suddenly grasped my hand. "If you're concerned, why not invite your father to stay with us for a while?" My heart raced. He was trying to imprison my father. "Your Highness is to consider it." I forced a smile. "But my father recently caught a cold, and I fear it may affect your Highness's health." Alden didn't press further, but his gaze grew colder. After the banquet, he personally escorted me back to my room. "You performed well tonight," he said softly at the door. "But people who are too clever usually don't live long." A chill ran down my spine, but I smiled and replied, "I am foolish. All thanks to your Highness's teachings." Once the door closed, I collapsed on the floor, drenched in sweat. He knew I was investigating him. This was a game of cat and mouse, and we both knew each other's roles. But this time, this mouse was going to turn the tables and eat the cat. On the eve of the autumn hunt, I feigned illness to avoid attending the family banquet. Once Alden left the manor, I immediately changed into night clothes and sneaked into the study. The moonlight filtered through the window, casting mottled shadows on the floor. I skillfully found the hidden button, and the bookshelf slid open soundlessly. This time, I had brought paper and ink, prepared to copy the secret letters between Alden and the Northern Deeg envoys. On the third day of the autumn hunt, the Crown Prince made his move at the Western Mountain training grounds. I quickly recorded the key information, beads of cold sweat forming on my palms. Suddenly, a breeze brushed my neck. Someone was there. I spun around, spotting Jack standing in the shadows, his eyes glinting coldly. "Such a refined hobby, Princess." His voice was laced with malice. "Does the prince know you're so interested in state affairs?" I forced myself to remain calm. "I was just here to retrieve a book." "Really?" Jack stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Then what is this?" He snatched the secret letters from my hand, and his face instantly changed. "So, the princess is a spy." I quickly assessed the situation. There were guards at the door. And the window was my only escape. Jax, I said softly. What did the prince promise you? I can double it. The cold laugh that followed made my skin crawl. The princess jokes. I'll report this to the prince right away. As he turned to leave, I swiftly drew a silver needle and thrust it into the pressure point at the back of his neck. Jax let out a muffled grunt and collapsed to the floor. I exhaled in relief but hesitated, noticing his fingers still twitching. Damn. I hadn't applied enough pressure. I turned and fled. But then I heard the shrill sound of a whistle. Chaos erupted from the manor as footsteps scrambled toward me. I dashed toward the back garden, my heart pounding like thunder. If I could scale that wall, I would reach the spot where Lancelot was waiting. Catch her. Jax's hoarse voice called from behind. I ran for my life. But a group of guards blocked my path. Princess. Please stop. The lead guard's expression was neutral. The prince has ordered you to return to your room. I took a few steps back, then suddenly spun and leapt into the nearby lotus pond. The icy water immediately submerged me. I couldn't swim. But I'd rather drown than fall into Alden's hands again. Water rushed into my nose. And my consciousness began to fade. In the final moments, I thought I saw Lancelot's anxious face. Moira. Wake up. I snapped my eyes open, gasping for air. I found myself in the familiar red drapes. This was the bridal chamber from my wedding day. The mirror reflected my appearance in the bridal crown and robes, just as it had when I first entered the prince's manor. I had been reborn again. And this time, to an even earlier point in time. Princess? The matchmaker looked at me with concern. Are you not feeling well? I shook my head, my mind racing. The last time I had been reborn, it was to the coming-of-age ceremony. Now, I had returned to the day of my wedding. Did every death send me back to an earlier time? The prince is here, a voice outside announced. My body tensed, and I watched as Alden pushed the door open. He was as handsome as ever, like an exiled immortal, but his eyes held the cold gleam of a venomous serpent. My beloved wife, you've been waiting long, he said, waving away the servants. A moment of spring night is worth 1,000 gold. I clenched the silver needle hidden in my sleeve, ready to strike when he approached. But Alden stopped just a step away. His smile twisted. What's this? You still want to kill me again? My blood ran cold. How did he know about my past life? I don't understand what the prince is saying. I forced out, trying to mask my fear. Alden suddenly laughed. The sound devoid of any joy. Interesting. Very interesting. He turned and walked toward the door. Tonight, I'll sleep in the study. When the door closed behind him, I collapsed onto the bed, cold sweat soaking my bridal gown. What did he know? The next morning, I excused myself to return to my family's home and hurriedly left the manor. At the designated tea house, Lancelot had been waiting for a long time. Are you all right? He scanned me with concern. Did Alden? I've been reborn. I cut him off. Lancelot froze. What? I died again. I whispered. I found evidence of Alden's rebellion at Tychon's manor. Lancelot's face turned pale, and he grabbed my wrist tightly. When did this happen? In another timeline. I smiled bitterly. It hasn't happened yet. He furrowed his brow, clearly struggling to understand. I quickly explained how I had been reborn back to the wedding day. So, he hesitated. You've already married him once? Not just once. I shook my head. I was reborn once during my coming-of-age ceremony. And now I'm back to the wedding day. Lancelot fell into a long silence, then suddenly knelt on one knee and took my hand. This time, I will not let you die. His eyes were filled with resolve. And my heart warmed at the sight. We need to change our strategy. I helped him up. Alden seems to have caught on. Lancelot nodded and took out a map from his chest. I've had someone draw the layout of Tychon's manor. I studied the map carefully and found it matched my memories perfectly. Here, I pointed to the study's location. There's a secret room that holds the letters with the northern D. Lancelot looked at me in surprise. How did you know? I discovered it during my last rebirth. I sighed. I didn't have the chance to tell you before Jax found me. Jax? He frowned. Tycon's personal guard? Yes, an unfulfilled obsession. He's the key, I said in a low voice. We need to deal with him first. Lancelot thought for a moment. Leave it to me. We continued discussing a few more details until Apricot knocked, reminding us it was getting late. Be careful. Lancelot hugged me tightly before we parted. If anything seems off, blow the jade whistle. On the way back to the manor, my mind kept turning over Alden's strange words. Do you still want to kill me again? Could it be that he had also been reborn? Or did he remember certain moments from our past lives? The thought sent a chill down my spine. When I entered the manor, the butler hurriedly approached me. Princess. The prince asked you to come to the study. My heart skipped a beat. In my past life, Alden had never seen me at this time. In the study, Alden was reviewing documents. Back already? He asked without lifting his head. How's Lancelot? I forced myself to remain calm. I was just visiting my family. How could I have seen Lancelot? Alden finally looked up, a playful gleam in his eyes. Is that so? Then who was the guest in room 3 of the Drunken Immortal Pavilion? A chill ran down my spine. I had been followed. If the prince already knows, why bother asking? I couldn't pretend anymore. Alden chuckled softly and put down his brush. You're much smarter than in the past. The words hit me like a thunderclap. He had been reborn too. What's the matter? Surprised. He stood and closed the distance between us. Did you think you were the only one who could come back for revenge? I stepped back, my back hitting the bookshelf. You remember the past life? Just fragments. He sneered. But enough to recognize you, my dear princess. I forced myself to remain calm. Since that's the case, the prince should know why I've come. Of course. He reached out to caress my face. I resisted the urge to pull away. But do you think you can win this time? I met his gaze firmly. How will we know unless we try? Alden suddenly laughed. His voice tinged with madness. Good. Very good. He stepped back. This game is getting more interesting. This is not a game, I said coldly. It's a matter of life and death. To me, it made no difference. He waved his hand dismissively. You may leave. Leaving the study. My legs were weak, almost unable to support me. Alden had also been reborn. And he remembered parts of his past life. This meant that all of my advantages might be lost. I had to act faster, more ruthlessly, and more unexpectedly. That evening, I secretly summoned and bamboo. What is your command, miss? He asked nervously. I need you to prepare a drug, I whispered. It should cause hallucinations but leave no trace of poison. Bamboo's eyes widened. Are you planning to deal with Jax? I nodded. In 3 days. He will be at Zui's Yanlu drinking. Bamboo understood immediately. I see, miss. 3 days later. Jax stumbled after drinking at Zui's Yanlu and fell to his death. Alden was furious but found no trace of poison. Did you do this? That night. He stopped me, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. You think highly of me, Your Highness. I blinked innocently. Could it be that I have too many enemies? Alden narrowed his eyes. We'll see. After Jax's death, I breathed a little easier and began to plan my next move. According to my memories, Alden would visit the border for an inspection before the autumn hunt. I had to stop him from contacting the northern tribes. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 5 days later, during the morning court session, the emperor suddenly collapsed. The royal physician diagnosed it as a precursor to a stroke. Will His Highness go to attend to His Majesty? I asked with feigned concern. Alden sneered. What are you pretending for? Didn't you already know the emperor would fall ill? My heart skipped a beat. I remembered this too. Your Highness is jesting. I tried to remain calm. I am not a physician. But you are a reborn soul. He took a step closer. Just like me. I fell silent. But suddenly, Alden smiled. Don't be nervous. He playfully patted my face. The game has only just begun. With that, he turned and left. leaving me standing there drenched in cold sweat. That night, Lancelot took the risk of sneaking into the manor. The emperor was seriously ill, and the crown prince had been placed in charge. Lancelot brought the latest news. Alden had been ordered to stay in the capital to attend to the emperor. I breathed a sigh of relief. This meant he couldn't go to the border to contact the northern tribes. But he was already starting to suspect. I was worried he too had been reborn and remembered parts of his past life. Lancelot's face turned pale. How is this possible? I don't understand either. I shook my head. But we have to speed up the plan. What plan? Assassination, I said softly. Before his memories are fully restored. Lancelot remained silent for a long while. Then suddenly shook his head. Too dangerous. It's safer than waiting for him to fully recover his memories before acting. No, I wish He firmly disagreed. I have a better way. What way? Let the crown prince know the truth. I widened my eyes. Are you crazy? Who would believe in rebirth? You don't need to believe in rebirth, Lancelot explained. You just need to believe Alden is plotting rebellion. He took out a letter from his chest. This is a copy of the secret letter you gave me in your last life. I've kept it all this time. I took the letter, hope rising in my chest. But it's not enough. I shook my head. We need more concrete evidence. Then let's find it. Lancelot grasped my hand. This time, we'll do it together. His hand was warm and strong, giving me great comfort. All right, I nodded. But if the situation becomes critical, I'll still choose the most direct approach. Lancelot sighed and pulled me into his arms. Promise me, he whispered in my ear. Don't go seeking death so easily. I leaned against his chest and nodded gently. In that moment, I suddenly understood rebirth wasn't about revenge. It was about learning how to truly live. Are you sure you want to do this? Lancelot gripped my hand, his knuckles turning white. I nodded and tucked the forged letter into my sleeve. This is the best way to draw the snake out of its hole. Morning light filtered through the window, casting dappled shadows between us. 3 days ago, we discovered that Alden's memory didn't seem complete. He remembered some fragments from his past life, but key details were still fuzzy. This gave us an opening. I had forged a secret letter, between the crown prince and the northern tribes. I explained quietly. Tonight, I will let Alden accidentally discover it. Lancelot furrowed his brows. It's too dangerous. It's not dangerous. I shook my head. The letter is written with special ink. The real information will appear in 3 days. His eyes lit up. What information? Proof of Alden's rebellion. I smiled. By then, he will find that the evidence against the crown prince he holds is actually evidence of his own treason. Lancelot inhaled sharply. How did you think of this? In my past life, he did the same thing to frame the crown prince. I sneered. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. We double-checked every detail of the plan until Apricot knocked on the door to remind us that time was running short. When we parted, Lancelot suddenly grabbed my hand. If anything changes, blow the whistle immediately. His gaze was so intense that it made my heart flutter. On the way back to the manor, I deliberately took a detour to Moxianjai to buy some high-quality rice paper. Alden was in the study reviewing official documents. When he saw me enter, a flicker of suspicion flashed in his eyes. Your Highness. I curtsied. I bought some new paper. And I brought it for you to try. He raised an eyebrow. When did the princess become so considerate? We are one as husband and wife. I replied softly. You work day and night. So it's only natural that I share your burdens. Alden narrowed his eyes, seemingly trying to discern the truth in my words. I casually placed the stack of rice paper on the small table beside the bookshelf. The top sheet had already been written on with special ink, containing the forged secret letter. I will take my leave now. I curtsied and turned to leave. I knew that with Alden's suspicious nature, he would undoubtedly inspect the papers. Sure enough, by evening, the butler rushed in to report. The prince requests that the princess come to the study immediately. I pushed open the door, and Alden was standing with his back to me at the window, holding the letter in his hand. Explain. His voice was cold. What is this? I pretended to be startled. I don't know. Don't know? He spun around suddenly, his eyes burning with rage. The ironclad proof of the Crown Prince's collusion with the northern tribes is hidden in your rice paper. I panicked and dropped to my knees. Your Highness. Please look carefully. I just bought this paper from Mo Xianshai. How could there be? Get up. Alden suddenly softened his tone. I didn't suspect you. I cautiously raised my head, only to see a strange smile spreading across his face. You've done a great service. He helped me up. This letter will be enough to ruin the Crown Prince. I fought back the nausea, allowing him to take my hand. What does your Highness plan to do? I asked. The next morning at court, I would expose him in front of everyone. His eyes gleamed with madness. The Emperor's gravely ill, and now is the perfect time to depose the Crown Prince. I feigned concern. But the Crown Prince is still the heir apparent. Not for long. Alden sneered. Go. Get some rest tonight. Back in my chambers. I immediately blew the jade whistle. Lancelot arrived as promised, slipping in through the window. He's taken the bait, I said quickly. Tomorrow morning, he will expose the Crown Prince's treasonous evidence in court. Lancelot's eyes lit up with excitement. I'll inform the Crown Prince to prepare. Remember. I grabbed his arm. The real contents of the letter won't be revealed until 3 days from now. He nodded and suddenly leaned in, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Be careful. The unexpected intimacy left me stunned, and by the time I regained my senses, he had vanished into the night. I touched my forehead, still feeling the warmth of his kiss, my heart pounding in my chest. The next morning, I rose early, eager to witness Alden's self-sabotage. However, by midday, he still hadn't returned. Princess. The butler rushed in, panic-stricken. The prince has been detained at the palace. My heart skipped a beat. What happened? It said the prince accused the Crown Prince of treason in court, but the evidence he presented turned out to be. The butler suddenly fell silent, looking at me in fear. What did it turn into? I demanded, my voice sharp. It turned out to be the prince's secret letters with the northern D. The butler trembled. The emperor fainted on the spot, and the Crown Prince ordered the prince's arrest. I barely suppressed my elation, pretending to be shocked. This can't be. As I spoke, a group of imperial guards burst into the manor. By order of the Crown Prince, the Tycon manor is sealed. The lead officer shouted. No one is allowed to enter or leave. I quickly assessed the situation. Our plan had succeeded, but now I was trapped as well. Princess, please return to your chambers. The officer's voice was cold. The Crown Prince has ordered you to be placed under house arrest. Once I was escorted back to my chambers. I checked to make sure the jade whistle was still in my possession. Thankfully, the guards hadn't searched me. I was about to blow it when I suddenly heard sounds of a struggle outside the window. Moments later, Lancelot crashed through the window, covered in blood. Run! He grabbed me urgently. Alden's men are coming. What? Isn't he captured? False. Lancelot hissed. That was a decoy. The real Alden escaped the city. My blood ran cold. Alden had outsmarted us again. What about my father? He's been captured by Alden's men. Lancelot ground his teeth. The entire Chloe family is surrounded. There was no time to think. I followed him as we climbed out the window. In the backyard, several guards lay dead, their throats slit with a single strike. Lancelot skipped me up and leapt onto the wall. Just as we landed, a crossbow bolt shot through the air, embedding deep into his shoulder. Lancelot. It's fine. He grunted, pulling me into a narrow alley. The carriage is at the end. We jumped into the carriage just as the sound of pursuing soldiers reached our ears. To Western Mountain. Lancelot shouted to the coachman. Hurry. The carriage sped off, and I tore a strip from my sleeve to bandage his wound. How did you know it was a decoy? His eyes. Lancelot gritted his teeth. The real Alden has a faint scar on his left eye, but the decoy didn't. My heart skipped. This was a detail even I hadn't noticed. What now? To the safe house first. He held my trembling hand. The Crown Prince has mobilized his troops to hunt us down, but Alden has hidden mercenaries outside the city. The carriage suddenly swerved sharply, nearly overturning. "Master!" the coachman cried in panic. "There's an ambush ahead." Lancelot threw open the door and saw a large tree blocking the road, with a dozen men in black standing, armed with knives. "Jump!" He pulled me out of the carriage just in time to avoid a rain of arrows. The coachman wasn't so lucky, he was shot full of arrows, falling dead in the road. "Follow me!" Lancelot shouted, drawing his sword and clearing a path as we sprinted into the woods. An arrow grazed my arm, sending a searing pain through me. We ran for our lives until the sounds of pursuit faded. "Where are we?" I gasped, panting. "At the foot of Western Mountain." Lancelot examined my wound. "There's an abandoned temple ahead where we can take shelter." The ruins of the temple offered some protection from the wind and rain. Lancelot built a small fire and began tending to my wound. "It's just a flesh wound," he sighed in relief. "No poison." I looked at the arrow wound on his shoulder, feeling a pang of guilt. "Your wound is worse." "I'm used to it." He tried to smile, but the pain made him wince. I helped him remove his outer garments and saw the wound around the arrow was already turning black. "It's poisoned," I cried. "We need to treat it immediately." Lancelot shook his head. "Let's take care of your arm first." "Don't move," I ordered. "The poison will destroy your arm if we don't act fast." I took a small knife from my waist pouch and heated it in the fire. "Hold on." He bit down on a stick, not making a sound as I quickly cut open the wound to let out the poison blood. Sweat beaded on Lancelot's forehead, but he stayed silent. Once the wound was cleaned, I tore off a piece of my undershirt to bandage him. "Thankfully, it's not dream-drunk poison." I sighed in relief. "It's just regular snake venom." Lancelot leaned weakly against the wall. "What now?" "Wait." I added another log to the fire. "The Crown Prince's men are probably already looking for us." As night fell, the temperature in the temple dropped. Lancelot began burning with fever, his body scalding hot. "Cold," he murmured deliriously. I removed my outer garment and covered him with it, holding him close. "Hang in there." My voice trembled. "As soon as the sun rises, I'll go get medicine." Lancelot suddenly opened his eyes, his gaze intense. "Moira." His voice was hoarse. "If I survive this, I'll take you far away from all of this." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "To Jiangnan. To Lingnan. Anywhere. Just the two of us." He weakly raised his hand to caress my face. "Just the two of us." Tears blurred my vision. In my past life, just before I died, he had said something similar. I had rejected him then, and it had led to everyone's death. "All right." I choked, nodding. "We'll go to Jiangnan. Open a small clinic." Lancelot's eyes lit up with surprise. "You're willing?" "Willing." I rested my head on his chest. "As long as I'm with you." He pulled me tightly into his arms, as if using all his strength. "Actually," he whispered, "the first time I met you wasn't in the Imperial Garden." I looked up in surprise. "When was it?" "When I was 6. My father took me to the Chloe family for a banquet." A nostalgic look appeared in his eyes as he said, "You were chasing a butterfly in the backyard and fell. I helped you up." I tried to recall, but I had no memory of it. "It's normal that you don't remember." He smiled. "But I have always remembered that little girl in the pink dress." Under the glow of the firelight, his profile appeared so gentle. Blending with the image of Lancelot, I held in my memory the one drenched in blood and wearing a battle-worn armor. "This time, I won't fail you," I whispered, making a quiet promise. Lancelot lowered his head and gently kissed my lips. The kiss was soft and restrained, yet it sent a tremor through me. As we lay in each other's arms, about to fall asleep, the sound of galloping hoofs suddenly echoed from the distance. "Someone's coming." Lancelot immediately became alert, struggling to reach for his sword. I held my breath and listened carefully. There were at least a dozen horses. Through the back door, he pulled me to my feet. "Quick!" We had barely reached the back of the temple when torches lit up ahead. "Search. Alive or dead." A familiar voice barked orders. It was Jack's. "He wasn't dead?" Lancelot shoved me behind a large tree. I'll lead them away. No. I gripped him tightly. You're badly wounded. Listen to me. He kept my face in his hands, blowing a whistle. The Crown Prince's men will come to save you. I shook my head, tears falling. We go together. It's too late. He forced a bitter smile. I can't run anymore. The sound of hooves grew closer, and the light from the torches illuminated the temple walls. Suddenly, having fulfilled my obsession, Lancelot pulled out a jade pendant from his chest and shoved it into my hands. Take this. Go to Jiangan and wait for me. With that, he pushed me away, turning and sprinting in the opposite direction. There. Jax's shout pierced the night sky. Shoot. I watched helplessly as Lancelot was forced into a corner by a rain of arrows, my heart aching as if it were being torn apart. In that desperate moment, another group of riders appeared from the side. Protect Lancelot. The leading officer shouted. The Crown Prince's men had finally arrived. Amid the chaos, I gritted my teeth and turned, fleeing into the dense forest. I clutched Lancelot's jade pendant tightly, engraved with the character Lan, and on the back, a hibiscus flower. It was exactly like the handkerchief I had given him when I was 7. I didn't know how the battle would end, only that I had to survive. For Lancelot, for all those who had died unjustly, and for the promise I had made at the Jiangan medical clinic. I woke up in the Crown Prince's camp just as the first light of dawn began to break. Where's Lancelot? I grabbed the first guard who entered, my voice hoarse. The guard shook his head. We haven't found him yet. I tightened my grip on the jade pendant, the weight in my chest like a massive stone. It had been 3 days since that night in the ruined temple, and Lancelot's fate was still uncertain. Chloe. The Crown Prince requests your presence, the guard said respectfully. In the Crown Prince's tent, several generals were studying a city defense map. Chloe. Crown Prince Edmund greeted me personally. The secret tunnel map you provided for the Tychon estate has been very useful. I forced myself to curtsy. Your Highness is too kind. Do you have any news of Lancelot? The Crown Prince shook his head, but there was a subtle glint in his eyes. We found Jax's body. And Alden? I asked quickly. Trapped in the royal manor. The Crown Prince sneered. He thought he could escape by drawing us away, not realizing we had already set up an ambush. So that's why Lancelot had deliberately led the pursuers away to allow me to meet up with the Crown Prince's men. My eyes burned, and I struggled to hold back the tears. When will you make your move? At noon today. The Crown Prince pointed at the map. We've already controlled the private soldiers stationed outside the city. I studied the map closely, suddenly pointing to a location. Here. The west corner gate. He will try to break through from there. Why? The Crown Prince asked. Because in my past life, he escaped from there, I said softly. With a northern Endali. The Crown Prince's eyes widened in shock, but he quickly regained his composure. I'll send more men. After leaving the main tent, I found Sage and asked for some medicine and silver needles. You're going in person? Sage frowned. It's too dangerous. I have to go, I said, tucking the silver needles into my pouch. There are things I need to ask Alden face to face. At noon, the Tychon estate was surrounded tightly. I wore a guard's uniform, hiding within the Crown Prince's personal guard behind him. Alden! The Crown Prince shouted. Come out and surrender. The estate gate slowly opened, and Alden, dressed in military armor, rode out on horseback. Even in this dire situation, he was still as handsome as a god, though his eyes now held a glint of madness. Why make such a big fuss? Your Highness? He laughed lightly. I only wish for father to change the air. Rebellion is a crime punishable by the death of 9 generations. The Crown Prince said sharply. What else do you have to say? Alden's gaze swept over the crowd, suddenly locking onto me. Even though I had disguised myself, he recognized me immediately. Moira. His lips curled into a strange smile. Is Lancelot dead? My blood ran cold in an instant. Unfortunately, having fulfilled my assai. He's still alive. Alden sneered. But not for long. His words were abruptly cut off as an arrow shot through the air, striking his horse in the eye. The horse reared and whinnied, nearly throwing Alden off. I turned toward the direction of the arrow. There, standing on a rooftop in black clothes, was Lancelot, bow in hand. He was still alive, though pale, with his left arm in a sling. He was alive. Alden's face twisted in rage. With a single order, dozens of assassins charged out from the estate. A chaotic battle erupted. I drew the silver needles, guarding the crown prince's side, precisely taking down a few assassins attempting to sneak attack. Lancelot moved like a shadow, leaping across rooftops. Each shot a perfect hit. Seeing the situation turning against Alden, he suddenly turned his horse around and charged into the estate. West corner gate. I shouted. He's trying to escape. Lancelot immediately understood, leaping down to pursue. I, along with the crown prince and an elite team, followed closely behind. Sure enough, Alden was heading for the west corner gate, where a fast horse was waiting. Just as he was about to charge through the small gate, Lancelot descended from the sky, stabbing the horse's leg. The horse crashed to the ground, and Alden was thrown into the dust. Protect the prince. Several of Alden's men desperately tried to block, but they were quickly subdued by the crown prince's men. Alden scrambled to his feet, drawing his sword, and faced off with Lancelot. A defeated general, Alden sneered. In the past life, you died by my hand. This time, it will be the same. Lancelot didn't reply. His sword aimed straight at Alden's throat. The two clashed in an instant, their swords flashing like snow. Even injured, Lancelot's swordsmanship remained fierce. But Alden was no slouch either. Fire! The crown prince ordered. No, I blocked the guards. Lancelot will get hurt. Sure enough, Alden deliberately closed the distance between himself and Lancelot, preventing the archers from taking aim. Seeing that Lancelot was starting to fall behind due to his injuries, I pulled out the silver needles, waiting for the right moment to strike at Alden's wrist. With precise accuracy, the needle hit Alden's hand, making him twitch and causing his sword to falter. Lancelot seized the opportunity, knocking Alden's sword out of his hand and forcing it to the ground. Bind him! The crown prince shouted. The guard surged forward, binding Alden tightly. Moira! He suddenly called my name, his voice unusually calm. You've won. I stepped in front of him, looking down at this man who once held my heart and who I also despised with every fiber of my being. When did you begin remembering your past life? I asked the question that had been on my mind for so long. Alden smiled. From the day you rejected my jade pendant. So that was it. He had been reborn a little later than me. Why? My voice trembled. Why did you treat me like that in the past life? Because you betrayed me. A flash of madness passed through his eyes. You fell in love with Lancelot. I shook my head. I didn't. You did. Alden shouted, his voice rising. I saw it in your eyes. I know that look. You love him. Lancelot stepped forward, positioning himself in front of me. Alden. You're mad. Mad? Alden suddenly burst into laughter. Moira, do you remember the last words I said before I died in our past life? I repeated his words. One by one, your father and brother's heads will still be hanging on the city walls. Your sister will be forced into military prostitution. That's the price of betraying me. Alden's face turned pale. You. How could you chest? Listening to the steady beat of his heart. Finally, having fulfilled the dam broke, and my tears flowed freely. 3 days later, Alden was executed. I didn't go to the execution ground. I simply stood on the city tower, watching from afar as his figure fell. Strangely, I didn't feel the satisfaction I had imagined. Instead, there was only an indescribable emptiness. Lancelot found me still lost in thought. The crown prince wants to make you a princess and marry you to me. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. I refused. I turned around, surprised. Why? Remember our promise? He gently cupped my face. Jianghan. A small clinic. My throat tightened. Are you really willing to give up everything? For you, having fulfilled my obsession. It's worth it. A month later, we quietly left the capital. Although my father was reluctant, he understood my decision. Go, live well. He patted my hand. Live well. The Crown Prince gave us a special gift deeds to a house in Gyeongdon. If anything happens, come back at any time. He said. The court will always need skilled doctors. The rainy season in Gyeongdon brought a misty haze to the air. Our clinic opened by the West Lake, named Muj and Tang. On opening day, Lancelot planted a hibiscus bush in the yard. When the flowers bloom, I'll marry you, he said as he embraced me from behind. I turned to meet his deep gaze. No need to wait for the flowers to bloom. We can marry now. In the gentle rain, we exchanged simple vows. There were no guests. Only bamboo and sage as witnesses. 3 years after our wedding, I became pregnant. Lancelot hardly left my side, even following me when I went on house calls. Relax. I laughed. It's just having a baby. He, however, was unusually serious. In our past life, I covered his mouth. No more about the past. We're starting fresh now. He held me tightly, his voice choking. Yes, Edin fulfilled my access. Starting fresh. When the hibiscus flowers bloomed, our daughter was born. We named her Hibiscus. As I gazed at her soft, pink face, I suddenly understood rebirth was not just for revenge. It was to learn how to truly live, to love and be loved. One afternoon, I sat in the corridor watching Lancelot teach our daughter about herbs. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the hibiscus flowers, casting dappled shadows on him. He looked up and smiled at me, his smile warm and genuine. The nightmares of our past life finally faded away. The end. The rainy season in Gyeongdon always carried the scent of damp herbs in the air. Madam, it's time to pack up. Bamboo stood outside the free clinic shelter, holding an umbrella. His shoulders were already soaked by the rain. I put down my silver needles and looked toward the end of the long line, at least a dozen more poor people waiting for treatment. Let's wait a little longer. I rubbed my sore neck. I'll finish seeing these last few. Bamboo sighed and turned to maintain order. Muj and Tang had been in operation for 3 years. Every 1st and 15th of the month, we held free clinics without fail. Doctor, my mother has been coughing for half a month. A timid little girl, about 6 or 7 years old, shyly handed me a rough cloth. This is the phlegm cloth. I examined the phlegm stains on the cloth before taking the pulse of the elderly woman lying on the door plank. Lung heat. I wrote a prescription. Bamboo, go get 3 doses of lung-clearing soup. The little girl suddenly pulled out a pale pink hibiscus flower from her torn pocket and placed it on my desk. Thank you, doctor. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. It's from our garden. I froze. This flower looked just like the one I had pinned to Lancelot's lapel when I was 7. Madam? Bamboo looked at me, puzzled. Give her 2 more doses of medicine. I snapped out of my daze and took a bag of preserved fruit from the drawer. And this? The little girl's eyes wide and in surprise as she bowed several times before helping her grandmother leave. Through the rain, I caught a familiar figure leaning against the door. Lancelot had no idea how long he'd been standing there, his blue robe darkened with rain stains. But his eyes still held the same tenderness they had all those years ago. Why don't you come inside? I waved to him. He slowly walked toward me, brushing a flower petal from my hair that had fallen there without my noticing. You were so focused, he said, taking the prescription from my hand. I'll write it. Your hands are shaking. Indeed. After 4 hours of needling, my fingers were cramping slightly. What about Hibiscus? I asked. She's asleep. He dipped his brush into the ink. Before bed, she asked when I would tell her the story of the great hero, Lancelot. I chuckled. You really know how to flatter yourself. Just telling the truth. He raised an eyebrow. Am I not a great hero? The rain subsided, and the last patient finally left with their medicine. Suddenly, heaven filled me. Lancelot wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my hand. Are you tired today? Not too bad. I leaned against his chest. Just my back aches a little. Warm hands immediately pressed against my lower back, kneading gently. That little girl, he murmured. She reminds me of the first time I saw you. I turned to meet his deep gaze. In the Imperial Garden? No, no. Earlier. He smiled softly. When we were 6. In the backyard of the Chloe family. You were chasing a butterfly and fell. I tried to recall, but the earliest memory I had was when I fell into the water at 7 and he saved me. Really don't remember? He pretended to be sad. And I've always remembered. I pinched his face. Did you like me back then? Maybe. He blushed slightly. I just thought you were really beautiful. Like a fairy in a painting. We laughed together. But then we heard hurried footsteps outside the door. Master. Madam. Bamboo ran in. Panic-stricken. Hibiscus is awake and crying. And we can't calm her down. We rushed to the back courtyard. And before we even entered the room, we heard our daughter's loud cries. Daddy. Mommy. 3-year-old Hibiscus sat on the bed. Her face flushed with tears. Lancelot rushed to her, picking her up in his arms. What's wrong? Darling? I'm scared. She sniffled, hiding her face in his chest. The big black dog. It turned out she had been scared awake by a stray dog at the alleyway entrance. I gently touched her sweaty forehead. Hibiscus. Don't be afraid. Daddy will chase the big black dog away. Really? She looked up at Lancelot with tear-filled eyes. Of course. Lancelot said seriously. Father is a great hero, always fighting the big black dogs. To prove his point, he picked up his daughter's small wooden sword and demonstrated a set of sword moves in the courtyard. Under the moonlight after the rain, his figure was as graceful as a crane, his sword slicing through the air, causing fallen leaves to scatter and avoid his path. I froze for a moment at one of his turns. This sword form was unfamiliar to me. Its arc strange and unlike the traditional martial arts of the Central Plains. More strangely, it felt somewhat familiar. It was like the moves Alden's northern guards had used in my past life. After putting my daughter to sleep, I sat at the vanity, combing my hair. As usual, Lancelot brushed my hair. That sword form you showed today? I casually asked. I've never seen it before. Did you just create it? His hand paused slightly as he continued to comb. Yes, having fulfilled my assertion. I improved it a little. He said. It's suitable for teaching Hibiscus self-defense. I turned and took his hand. Lancelot. Do we still have secrets from each other? His eyes flickered for a moment. Then he smiled bitterly. I can't hide it from you. Can I? The moonlight filtered through the window, casting mottled shadows on his face. My mother. He began. And my heart skipped a beat. She was from the northern tribes. The answer sent a shock through me. She was a healer in the northern royal court. He continued, his voice low. She met my father when she came with the envoy 20 years ago. After the envoy returned home, she secretly stayed behind, hiding her identity. No wonder you know the northern script. I suddenly understood. That flame tattoo. It's the mark of the royal guard. He nodded. My mother was once the queen's personal healer. This secret, one that had remained unsaid in my past life until the very end, was now openly revealed before me. Why tell me now? I asked. Because I feared. He swallowed hard. That you would despise my bloodline. I hugged him tightly. My heart aching. Fool. You accepted my rebirth. And now you're worried about this? He hugged me back fiercely, his body trembling slightly. Madam. Bamboo's voice suddenly called softly from outside the door. There's an emergency patient in the front hall. The man who entered was a middle-aged merchant, claiming to have severe abdominal pain. When did it start? I asked, checking his pulse. This noon, he said, cold sweat pouring down his face. I ate some tainted fish. His pulse was irregular. But not food poisoning. I rolled up his sleeve and, sure enough, saw a flame tattoo on the inside of his wrist. Alden's former subordinate. I forced myself to stay calm. Bamboo. Go get the pain-relieving powder. Lancelot silently appeared by the door. I gave him a signal. This gentleman. He smiled as he stepped forward. My wife needs to remove your outer garments for acupuncture. Please follow me. The man's eyes flashed with suspicion. But he still followed Lancelot to the next room. In less than a quarter of an hour, Lancelot returned alone. His hand stained with blood. "It's taken care of," he whispered. The assassin was one of Alden's men, specifically assigned to watch our clinic. A chill ran down my spine. How many more like him? Just the last one. He cleaned his hands. I've interrogated him. The others were cleaned up by the Crown Prince's men. Even so, that night, Lancelot checked all the doors and windows and stayed guard outside our daughter's room until morning. Another year passed, and the hibiscus flowers bloomed again. I became pregnant with our second child. Lancelot stayed close to me, even following me when I went out on medical calls. "Relax," I teased him. "Wasn't hibiscus fine when I carried her?" He was unusually serious. "In your past life." I pressed my hand to his mouth. "No more past lives. We are reborn now." During my worst morning sickness, he stayed up all night preparing antimacassar for me. "It's bitter." I frowned and pushed the bowl away. "I added some honey," he coaxed. "Just one sip?" I forced myself to drink it, but ended up throwing up all over his clothes. "I'm sorry," I said, feeling guilty. He wiped his clothes without care. "Silly. You've endured so much for me." His voice trailed off, and when I looked up, I saw that the man who had faced thousands in battle, never flinching, now had tears in his eyes. At 5 months pregnant, I began to feel the baby move. Every night, Lancelot would wake up, quietly checking my breathing. One night, I grabbed his hand and placed it on my swollen belly. "Can you feel it?" I whispered. "The baby is moving." The motion under his hand made him widen his eyes. He's kicking me." "Yes, you've fulfilled my obsession. Very healthy." I smiled. "So don't worry. Now, sleep." He carefully wrapped his arms around me, pressing his face against my back. "Moira." His voice was thick with emotion. "In this life, I can finally love you openly." On our daughter's first birthday, Lancelot held a proper wedding under the full bloom of the hibiscus flowers. Unlike the rushed elopement 3 years ago, this time Sage officiated, Bamboo sang the blessings, and the whole neighborhood came to celebrate. I wore a new pale lotus-colored dress, and he wore a deep blue long robe, holding our daughter as we completed the ceremony. We bowed to heaven and earth. We bowed deeply to the courtyard full of hibiscus. We bowed to our ancestors. We bowed to the empty chairs, offering prayers to our deceased parents. Spouses bowed to each other. Lancelot handed our daughter to Bamboo and stood facing me. There was so much he wanted to say in his eyes. But in the end, he simply gave a deep bow. After the ceremony, as the guests left, we sat in the courtyard watching our daughter chase butterflies. "Do you remember?" he suddenly asked. "In the past life, I said I would take you to Gyeonggun." I nodded. "I refused back then. What about now?" I leaned on his shoulder. "Aren't we here now?" He kissed the top of my head. "Yes. We finally made it." As the sunset painted the sky, the petals of the hibiscus flowers fluttered in the wind, landing on our daughter's laughing lips and on the fingers we entwined. The blood and tears of the past seemed to have faded away. Only this moment of peace remained tangible and real. End of extra chapter.